Get yourselves ready. A bracket reset for the Premiership tier. We've got underway. Effectively, Game 8 against these two sides in quick concessions, and it's almost like a bit of deja vu. One side already defending from a kickoff.
And that side is the side in red, as Zamberg. Last series, he was known as that player who just hoofed the ball high and saw the pressure away. A player who really didn't want it in his own defence. And, well, his counterparts in Tempo and Dansku doing the mechanical work, it must be said, to actually create the opportunities downfield. And on the end of Paradise, there's not particularly been a highlight player for me. They've been a very well-worked team effort. And Edgeby, we saw what he was capable of in the previous series, and I'm wondering if we can see a little more of those glimmer of hopes in this series.
As the game really does find its footing once more, we will certainly see if there is that glimmer once it gets fully developed. Mind you, for the sake of clarity as well too, you saw in the bracket as well, the upper final earlier today, Paradise themselves won at 3-2. The first time Dustsucker has beaten them in the playoffs here to get us in this situation. And we just don't want magic. We want that sort of special stuff that has caused stuff of dreams to happen right now. And Dansku, he will run away here. There will be no dreaming as the Nightmare Creamy chases him down back in middle. And that spills, and it's danger, danger. Do they run away from it? Well, they can't afford to.
Absolutely not. They had to stand their ground and let the invasion come through from this red side. As Dansku is going to find Tempo upfield. A beautiful first touch, and he's got two more left to come, and a ball just floating around that backboard, seen away by the defence.
Taken away to the corner. A lot more smarter here, Psycho, in this bracket reset here, as the teams not willing to take a chance. We didn't get necessary flair, which I think would be somewhat unfair. We've seen some pockets of space being found out of nowhere. We've seen the flip resets. But unfortunately, we've seen the post move around here. And if that was Tempo, that left post would have let it go in, and not unfortunately. And that will be goal number 1 here. It's a cruel game, this.
It's a cruel game and a cruel world, especially for Tempo, as he opted to find his teammate, and he did exactly that. Seconds later, diminished, turned to dust by the opposing offence, and Edgeby was the player to tuck it in. And a lot of casters would refer to that as a heads-up play, and unfortunately I can't think of a better way to describe it. Edgeby was just one step ahead of the game with that play.
Some would prefer, others might sit there and try to waffle as Tempo gets a fabulous save away there. NJ is there, once more touching. Look at Tempo, moving, shooting. It's the left post that denies him, but this time it slips on in here. A little bit of redemption.
Certainly so, and Rexo on that front post couldn't get the connection he needed. He was in two minds. Do I stay inside of the play? Do I clamber up on that backboard and try and clear something high from there? And clearly he made the wrong decision on that occasion, as there was two players incapable of getting the job done. And as another demolition comes through, and Creamy happy to see it wide.
Tempo's there, Rexo following a suit. But again, it's a little bit worrisome here as Zamberg can only tip this around, but again, that's what we like to see, some 1-2s in the back lines, nobody's pushing too far up here, and Rexo just tip it slightly away from the left hand side post, but Tempo, he didn't chase it, he let it run the play here, and Creamy likewise doing the exact opposite here, so both of them fancying each other's weaknesses right now.
Absolutely so, and this red side is going to try and exploit that in the corner, but Creamy stood his ground and is able to tip it above one, as Rexo, all he needs to do is drop it in that tiny, tiny piece of space presented in the net, and unfortunately couldn't make the shot stick. As Zamberg, a whiff on the backboard, is going to tear apart this own defence, as Edgeby is going to see it across back into the middle. Zamberg once again off to the side wall, and for now they have their shape back.
There's Tempo. He's kept himself reasonably opposed there on that one. And speaking about the shape that Seiko was alluding to, Sandberg left alone here. Densku on the right hand side to give options if he wanted to pass there. And well, he elected to go alone. Not a fan of it, but it will somewhat work temporarily. And it's almost like we restarted here.
Absolutely so, and what a snipe out the air from Rexo. What a touch as well infield to Creamy. Blocked away by the defence.
Nice little soft touch. Back it goes. And tempo. Sends it high, and you look at Sandberg waiting patiently in the middle of the field here. Second touch, mind you. Not as good, but certainly crucial to get this ball forwards.
And Dansku has one last opportunity, one last hurrah, and is going to try and find the back of the net. Rexo just in the right position to deal with it, and Zamberg is cut away by three pre-jumping blue members. And Creamy, happy to see it forward to Regby. It looks relatively open to follow from, but the defence back in numbers as one last shot comes through, and we finally see our way into overtime.
Had a few OTs in the grand final itself, but what a chance both of these two teams to set a mark and set the tone for the evening here with an OT win here, as this ball's been launched quite nicely up here, but this time it's still Suckers who will shape the conversation here, and that's a shot and a half. If it's had a bit of accuracy, it would have been good,
but it wasn't good enough on that time of asking. In an overtime situation, there aren't too many of those left, because one goal spells the end of the game, so you don't have many to be playing about with. As Dansku off to the corner is going to find a teammate in Zamberg, striking just higher the margin.
Tempo in the middle. A nice open wide pass, and Dansku, what are you doing? Why? You just stood there and watched it go in.
What else can you do, Danny? It was an infield pass straight back to the hands of Creamy. 1:15. Of course he's going to sit there and stare.
He could at least jump for it.
He could have. I'd be terrified.
That's how game won.
It is how game one happened, I am well aware, and unfortunately the defender just... I don't think there was much he could do. Clearly you think otherwise, but regardless, it was very, very exciting game one, and for both of these teams, I do believe they were able to give their full strengths. I really don't think there was much of that clumsiness we saw in the opening stages of the previous series.
Well, certainly so. I agree with that statement, and I agree with what's been put forth here, Seiko. What also needs to be put forth as well too, and if you have just tuned in for the RSC for the very first time or a regular at this point here, don't forget it is a community run league, and any support that you can give, whether it's through just following or even a donation as well too, is greatly appreciated. Doesn't need to be much, and if you want to avoid some of those pesky adverts as well too, you can also drop, well, quite literally, an Amazon Prime or a subscription that way too to help fund the league. But you know what, when you have this quality here, you don't appreciate it until it's gone, Seiko.
Absolutely so, and it would be a shame to see this go, so we're going to try and cherish these final games whilst we still have them, as both of these teams know what's on the line. And unfortunately at the opening stages, I talked about the unfolding of the carpet earlier. This one has actually unrolled, unfortunately for the side of Paradise. So opening goal they really shouldn't have conceded.
Shouldn't have, but they did.
Well, bluntly put, and bluntly so, we will continue with another open net for Tosaka. Let's have an action replay on this as Creamy, with an infield touch to a teammate, blocked away by Tempo. And you know what, I was talking about how in the first series it was Paradise finding those open pockets of space in the midfield. Dustsucker certainly showing they are capable of exactly the same thing, Danny.
Certainly so. This is amazing what can be developed when you have that huge wide open pocket of space, and sadly not quick enough to follow a suit here, as we could have been 2-1 with would it be fair to say 3 open nets?
Potentially so. And I'm expecting us to see a couple more as well if this sort of play continues. As Rexo reaching out for the upper hand. Oh, the words have lost me, Danny. What's going on? We had such a nice game 1. What has changed?
Desperation. And the prize pool on the line too, Psycho. Let's not forget that.
Certainly so. The winner of this taking away 1,250 British pounds. That's quite the haul. And at the moment, maybe a little bit of that panic seeping through when it's wanted the least for both of these rosters. And there is a wealth of experience in the individual talents on both of these rosters, but an occasion like this, it is sure to get you at least some point in the series.
Certainly so. It's easy to let yourself either be carried away by the game and you just lose your influence or the ability to dictate it here. And well, we saw what happened in those last 3 goals there. I would be somewhat surprised if it continues through the rest of the night. But that's a good save here. It's a nice settler for, of course, Rexo and the rest of the squad here as that ball tipped back in the game down the line. And Creamy, look at that there. He's bought a bit of space to a second chance.
And an infield pass and a beautifully well-worked shot as well from Edgeby. The space was granted from the loose touch from Zandberg. The positional pressure caused the issue and the infield pass so beautifully done.
Just like that, the first real goal that took a bit of work. Forged there through the pass. Finally to a piece here. Few fans here will be a little bit disappointed by Hart and the means it went into, but it happens, and that's a strange blunder.
Absolutely so, and an almost open net capitalised upon by Dustsucker as Edgeby can only go as far as Tempo is working his way down the field. Rexo killed for his efforts at the back line, but Creamy touch forward, certainly not a threat for now.
Nice pop, straight down the middle, shouldn't be a threat just yet, so Dansku should have an option, but back it goes. Dustsucker still on the ascendancy.
And Dansku trying to send a ball to Zandberg, who was waiting patiently on that backboard, just trying to cause an issue if the ball was to seep its way through, but didn't on that occasion. So there's a bit of awkwardness on the side of Dustsucker now. 2 players finding themselves in each other's paths, and a whiff from the defence. Not spelling disaster just yet, but Rexo is going to keep this attack going. Zandberg across the field. And thankfully, they're going to survive.
For how much longer, though, as this ball's just edging a little bit forward here. And there's Edgeby himself there as Zandberg tips it. He's got past 2 here, but not to recovery, and certainly not a body to move. It's a little bit difficult when you're dead.
Certainly so, as Creamy working his way to Rexo and Dansku. Down the sidelines, bumped away by Rexo. They're trying to get creative with this offense. Tempo just gets a touch in otherwise.
Rexo. But Zandberg to dictate the ball as he just landed in the right spots here. Nobody has ventured those Psycho where we've seen that original carpet of space effectively being played. That has not been an element of this bracket reset that has been shown yet.
And I have to agree with you at the moment. It seems that both of these teams in their bid for control are forgetting exactly that. They're just sending the ball long, trying to work something from nothing. What a flick from Tempo. He's got the follow-up. Oh my goodness, Danny. I know we saw an incredible goal in the lower finals, but this might take the cake.
I think it's just not the cake. He's taken the whole dinner set with him. There's not even a table left behind there. Once that laser beam sight was set, goal, gone, scoffed. And frankly, is there anything left to munch in this particular and arguably decisive game already?
And certainly for me, one of the most special goals of the entire competition. And it struck at a great time where everything's hanging in the balance and Tempo. He had an infield pass option as well. I was praying he could lace a ball central, but he had other plans from the get-go. A player with so much mechanical prowess, pulling it out A fantastic moment in this competition.
A few seconds, we've already had a few dying heroics. But Dustsuckers, they know how to see these these difficult spots out here already tonight alone here. But it's Creamy's turn. They get things going. It's unfortunately gone backwards at this point in time here. We have just seen, arguably, and we might be debating here for a while here, the best goal of tonight. I say probably second, personally. But it's 1-1.
Absolutely so, and we cannot understate the importance of that particular goal. It's changed the pace completely in Dustsucker. They had a lot of work to do to even get to this bracket reset we find ourselves in right now, and somehow they've pulled something even more out of the bag, and they're causing havoc for Paradise, who can't get that foothold that they established in the early scenes of that previous series. It seems they have no midfield territory to work with Paradise. They just can't find each other on the field.
Certainly so, and I know if it was Spooks in the commentary booth we talked about earlier today about Demo Wars just opening a bit of space. We saw that at the chaotic bit of Game 5 at one point. We've actually shied away from that. It's a lot more tranquility, if you want to put it that way, where there's a lot of space somewhat given for something to occur, and we don't see it. Then we see this chase and this hounding off the ball here. And that game there, let's not forget too, it started with a few wide open nets. It ended with something special. Will it continue?
Well, hopefully so. We're going to see an opening opportunity for Tempo off of the kickoff, just loosely dribbling into the opponent's half off of such a well-won challenge, and simply nothing they can do.
Paradise had the kickoff advantage to such an extreme favourable side of their own here. It's shocked that they've conceded one there, but they might just get one back here. It's been lobbed to with such velocity onto the ball there. Dustsuckers not taking a chance on that one. A good proper hoof downfield. No real chasers though off it, and that just showed you how much pressure after the second kickoff they were truly under.
Absolutely, and Zandberg's going to try and re-establish some more pressure with a shot just underneath the crossbar. Somehow the keeper's got to grips with it, and they're going to see some clearance on the opposing end.
Nice to see a hug off the post there. We haven't seen much of it other than Tempo and his dating of the first left-hand side post, and it's continued to be a theme of tonight. It's been almost near replicated in that moment there as everybody was grouped. Now he's in the presence here. That ball's went back and forth, and this is what I'm talking about. Very much what are you doing with the ball, and not a clear vision from either of these two sides after that original calamity, blunder. What do you want to describe that goal as? That one's been tipped away very fortuitously.
Yeah, and that calamity you describe, it's certainly showcased at the moment, but it seems to be Dustsucker with a lot more of the commanding territory. It seems that they're spacing themselves out so much that they're just capable of dealing with every situation. Every piece, every option is being covered by this Dustsucker side, and it's such an important thing to see when they're trying to maintain control of this game.
And also there's a little bit of what has happened tonight in at recent time. The Paradise roster that was up 2-0 in the series wise, we thought was done and dusted based on how comfortable, how almost easy, how effortless it was made. Now they really are into the trenches of this war that Dustsucker has put on here. That's an easy shot at that distance to be pushed away, and effectively now a double commit to follow it suit here. The side that been forced into this bracket reset not looking anywhere like that former selves.
Absolutely, and we've seen Tempo try exactly that beforehand. As soon as he rotated his butt 90 degrees backwards, I knew exactly what was on his mind. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't find a second highlight material goal. The ball's going to be lofted very high to Dansku, who's got an important touch and a secondary touch at that, as Edgeby working forwards to a teammate, blocked away by a defence with so much solidity in the name of Dustsucker so far, and it's been something that I have been worried about all of today, and right now they are certainly showing their solidity.
Certainly so. It's been nice to see here. That will be a straight ball down. really good in terms of reading the bounce and getting the save as well too. You fancied the striker, they eventually put that one in as Rexo tips it forth, and it's a long drawing ball here. It gets at least past 1-2, bumped away here, so his third ready of waiting. Well, not needed as it just dropped right into the middle of it.
Dansku has so much space to work with. I thought he could do something more with that though. Perhaps a forced 50-50 to find a ball high or just somewhere infield to create that opportunity. As Creamy is caught off guard. There's a 50-50 central. A loose spillage towards tempo, and once again for Paradise, their life has become that little bit harder.
It's been hard for some time. There was a few elements of doubt. Can they close tonight out? Well, unfortunately, they have not been in a position to really show that quality that's required to become champions. Soccer, who has faced every possible situation that you can humanly think of, and they've dealt with it. Sometimes they have not achieved it, though, Seiko. But do you know what? It doesn't matter. They've ticked the right boxes when necessary.
Absolutely, and full credit to them for doing exactly that. Zamberg is trying to keep those boxes ticked in defence, just baiting those players forwards, but a loose ball to Rexo is going to give him a brief opportunity to find something off the backboard to a teammate, but at the moment it's looking patient from this Dustsucker side, and although Rexo is looking all flashy in the air, means absolutely nothing at the moment.
Creamy over, and a bit too heavy, and unfortunately that will be nothing in return. Nothing to really be considered gain in this third game of this bracket reset. We've been wondering what Dustsucker has been capable of doing. They've answered Paradise themselves though. I'm not saying Psycho, they have to at least get something going. They've got to force at least one goal in the next game pretty much from the early get-go. I'm not talking about a kick-off goal, something there to put the doubt, to put the fear back into it, because that has just evaporated away.
Absolutely so, and a little bit of salt to the wound is certainly not going to help the cause of Paradise. And they're far from exactly that word at the moment. They are in hell right now, trying to figure out how they can get themselves back into this series. At the moment, it looks unforgiving from Dustsucker. It looks as if there is no way to exploit their structure. They are performing so well.
Can I ask you, Psycho?
Go on.
What's your form of hell?
This right now for Paradise is hell. Because there is not a chance, there is not a way they have been able to find themselves into the past 5 minutes. And they are at a stage in this particular bracket reset where they need to change the tempo quickly. They need some new ideas, some fresh set of just anything to give them a glimmer of hope.
Fair enough. I thought there may have been a little quick jab there in form of maybe something else there, but I don't think we're at hell just yet. I think it could get a lot worse here in terms of the pain, because Dustsuckers has not delivered a final blow that we can sit here and say that is the game done and dusted, so Seiko, because frankly Paradise at this point in time aren't going to be worried. It's only 2-1 in the series, that's what they'll be telling themselves. Maybe a false legacy or profit in terms of how this series may be played out, but that's what they've got to cling on to as hope.
Well, the series score is 2-1 at the moment in the favour of Dustsucker. And Paradise, even if their mental game is still strong at the moment and they don't feel as if they're in that hell that we were talking about, at the moment they need something to give, as this is undoubtedly the most crucial game of all games in this series.
Certainly so. There's nothing worse than playing 3-1 behind in the championship point effectively, because you know one mistake will be all that's remembered. People will just look at it and sort of go, yep, you were either the one that done it, caused the problem, and we are now runners up. But when you get it and sink it in, the joy and everything else that comes with it, it's wonderful. But Dansku, he will not be happy, however, with so far his team performance here, because they've been pretty much stagnant in this sort of playing off the ball.
Oh, and Edgeby has managed to get himself a breakaway play into the offensive zone, and a whiff from Zandberg could have caused a nasty scar to what has otherwise been a fine Dustsucker performance. And speaking of a fine performance, Tempo beautifully placed, almost a ceiling pinch over to Zandberg, and what a piece of placement.
What can you do? What can you do?
In that situation, all you can do is sit back and laugh, because there is absolutely no defending that play, period. Tempo being the player to generate that play, and I know I said it was a spectacular finish from Zandberg in the manner he did, but it was essentially an open net. That was how good the pass was from Tempo. And Dustsucker, they're just able to find each other everywhere on the field and connect with each other at the moment, and it's just helping them out so much.
Lincoln, you missed that. That's how quick it was, but you're right. The mention of Spicy about that pass is why that we harp on to why are you not passing, or at least trying to find it in such a level of the sort of the game here, because that's the result of it. You find it so perfectly. Yes, you need to have a bit of creativity, something a little bit different towards it, not just a standard pass, just a, well, easily read, but once it delivers like that, do you know what, Paradise, this is looking more like hell now.
Certainly so, and it's reflected by the previous game as well. They were in exactly this same situation where there's just nothing gives for the offense, and at the moment it's a driving offense from Dustsucker. They're locking them away, and there's two players committed now in a 1v1 situation, but Tempo still get to grips with it.
Look at the pass!
Oh!
This game is not fair. This game is unjust. Take a moment to sit there and look at that, and sir going, are you just lucky our guardian angel kept that one out? Brave off the line.
I've absolutely no idea what we've just witnessed, but somehow the Dustsucker side was able to clamber onto what was an incredible infield opportunity from Paradise, and something they needed to get the ball rolling, and it actually paid off for them as well, with a shot laced towards that upper 90 as they try and do something similar now. But unfortunately for them, Dustsucker, they're made of miracles at the moment, it seems, and everything they do is just working out for them.
There's an argument, whether in sports, esports, or whatever it is, of having a purple patch. But when you're running well and you inform your own luck, you deserve a moment. Dustsucker had theirs. Now we need Paradise to respond. We need them to show up, and you know what? We're fed up. We just want to put this game to bed and show what we're capable of. They've got one back, but one cannot be enough. It needs to multiply.
Absolutely, and they also need to keep this going with frequency, because it was 3 infield pass opportunities that could have resulted in a goal for this blue side, but only one of them found their way into the back of the net, as Edgeby is going to try and do the most to take it round the defence. Zandberg, holding on for dear life off the ceiling of his own net, has done such a good job to once again keep Dustsucker in the equation, and the counter-attack exactly is the same, exactly a repeat of what we saw just seconds ago.
The fact that it sat there moments ago and Creamy probably called it off, and you know what, he thought he had it. They knew they may have had a follow-up as well too. They don't, and it runs away, and Dustsucker there. It's not even their offense that's been the highlight tonight, it's been their defense that has been so disgusting, that they've made it look so appealing to everybody else but this side.
This side is something very special right now. As when Zandberg's pulling out stuff like that, you know the confidence is pretty high for Dustsucker. And Paradise, what can you say, Danny?
What I would like to say can't be broadcast at Psycho. Because I'll tell you, being in those comms on the losing side is not on the, how we can say it, PG friendly.
You're absolutely right. And there might be one final opportunity, the direction of Paradise in this particular game. 50 seconds left on the clock. It's not an impossibility to come back. But based on the structure, based on the performance we've seen from Dustsucker so far, the chances are just nigh on impossible.
Well, I think this might be a first here. Psycho has called the game before I have. This is a proud moment for you, surely.
We'll call it character development. At the moment.
So.
Edgeby in the corner, trying to figure something out. I know I said they had their one last time ago, but he's trying to change that. As Zamberg is going to strike on what is almost an undefended net, but Edgeby rooted firmly in front of the goal line is going to see it wide. Not for long.
No. And I think at this point, I think it might be time for our sponsors, because that there will be the signal point of this game here. You can't do anything more at 5-2. And Paradise certainly no longer living up to their name. They've made everything tranquility at base. Dustsuckers, who forced this bracket reset in the first place, now forced them to face effectively 3 championship points. That's how many chances Dustsuckers could finish this game off, Psycho. And you know what? They deserve every possible chance, because they are the ones who made it possible.
Absolutely so, and I've not seen such a dire circumstance in Rocket League in a very long time, watching any of these sort of bubble level scenarios. This is one of the most demanding performances I've seen in such a long time from Dustsucker, and that is such an impressive feat, because there's been a lot of play that I've watched recently in Paradise. They're not putting a foot wrong as far as I'm concerned. It just seems to be Dustsucker, which is just turning up in another gear.
Certainly so, and it's a bit at me at this point here. You sort of go, Dustsucker's playing quite well. They're almost a different level above their opposition here. In Paradise, the problem is, have they effectively bottled this grand final into the bracket reset? Because that's in the back of my mind now, because they had the chance to win it, or in terms of getting themselves in that position. They didn't do it.
Absolutely, and it was something I was referencing in that first series towards the tail end, that unfortunately for Paradise, they're going to be looking at those first 7 games and thinking that is something they want to repeat, because they effectively threw away, well, the latter stages of that series, and it allowed Dustsucker the space to work forwards and gave them the opportunities to regain their confidence and rebuild from the ground up.
Certainly so. What will need to be certainly said here, and I'm absolutely surprised here, and Psycho, I'll let you have the honours of saying what it is.
Well, Danny, we find our way in an unlikely circumstance. Match point towards the team favouring the red. Something I didn't expect to say coming into this particular match. And there has been an interesting turn of affairs, Danny.
Certainly so, and what is an utter surprise is there's been a substitution. Mid-series, against 3 championship points, Creamy taken off for Vinci, arguably one of the greatest ones player of his generation that came through. I know some people might disagree with that. He might not be the most popular people in some people's eyes, but when he plays, my word, you've got to be afraid of it. And you know what? It's now made this in a much more different light, this grand final. The bracket reset itself, because there's a new element they've got to learn here. It's a different player. It's 33% of a full change here. It's just not what they've known for 10 plus games.
And I'm just sitting back and laughing, because at the moment Dustsucker may have found something that frustrates them a little bit. Those are not any words that I've said in, well, perhaps the last half an hour, to be honest with you. So they've pretty much commanded the series, and you're right in saying this change of pace might certainly change the pace of this series overall.
Don't know whether this is the right decision for the substitute in the first place. They've done it. I don't know what the reason behind it is. But again, Dustsuckers, they are frustrated. They are agitated to the point here that they had to bring a substitute on just to force that element of doubt into their heads here. But would you do it the same in your situation yourselves? I don't know.
We can never know, Danny, but in my opinion, this is one of the smartest substitutions that could be made for this Paradise roster. It's like I was alluding to in our short break beforehand. Well, there was just nothing giving for that side. It seemed as if they were playing a good Rocket League, generally speaking, and yet Dustsucker were just pounding them. And maybe Vency is that factor which comes into play in the late game, as Edgeby is going to try and work a shot on target. Rexo just camping behind the back lines to see what happens. He's a bit uncomfortable as Dansku takes to the backboard and finds the double touch, clawed it away from his own teammate Tempo.
That's unfortunate, but you can now sense that Dustsucker is up for this one. The cage has been rattled, and that's unfortunate how the original shot been turned away. They're still playing defence after that play too here. It's finally launched downfield. Will it feign a teammate? Well, Sandberg is there temporarily, and I'm also getting word, and whether rightly or wrongly too here, this is the first substitution in a grand final in the Premiership itself here at a late stage, at such a crucial moment here. I'm not saying it takes guts to make that decision. Fair play to you.
Absolutely so, and right now it's working out for them as the player, the man of the moment, Vency, is taken to the skies and trying to beat out the defenders as Edgeby working a ball central, only as far as Tempo as the ball comes straight back to the hands of Rexo. And at the moment, this Paradise roster trying to pound that backboard, really try and force the defence all out of shape as one bumper's come through, an infield pass, a keeper in no man's land off to the corner, and from out of nowhere Paradise have certainly made their return now.
Certainly so, and it requires Vency to be the catalyst to do so. I'm also going to make an unpopular opinion as well, that Paradise would have probably lost with Creamy based on what we've been seeing. But we will never know what could have been. That's the unfortunate situation there. But what is now in the current, Rexo, NJ, and of course now Vency has now came, upset the apple cart, and effectively now making 3 players from that one individual country very much upset here.
Absolutely so. As Rexo is going to continue this domination, it's going to be a third. It's a loose touch from the defender. And some suffocating offense indeed from Paradise. I was referencing how they were trying to exploit that backboard and just peel the defenders away from the positions they want to be in one by one. Once again, finding a pocket of space.
Just for the record, who is Dustsucker's sub?
It's a good question. But do they dare do what their opponents have, well, maybe spawned out of desperation? Do they do the same? I think not.
Well, with that being the case, Extendo might be on the side benches warming up here from that substitution potentially, because if you have had that effect, why not throw it on the other end as Vency's looking to cause a bit of trouble here. Do you know what? I'm not saying here, this has caused a lot of upset in some people's eyes here, but in terms of the quality, it hasn't diluted slightly here. But what do you do if you're Dustsucker, because they have not broken really in this half other than that one chance to make it 1-1.
And I think it's maybe a conflict in styles. The team that was Paradise earlier, certainly not with the same style as the Paradise now. They're playing for these closely controlled plays, these air dribbles, these suffocating pieces of offense, and taking things slow, importantly, when they do have the control. And Paradise have worked something from thin air.
Well, certainly so. And one of the players is asking about whether the substitution was legal, which is interesting enough. So it just shows you that the thought didn't cross their mind. They were just laser focused into the situation. Let's put it this way here. Nobody expected this to happen, Seiko. And do you know what? It was the right decision. They've came back, they've won it. It's just what happens here, because I'm now confused.
It's not often that you see either of us two truly confused in the commentary booth. It's usually pretty clear-cut, the state of affairs, and in this match there has been a complete plot twist to the situation. And for Dustsucker, they do have more chances, and maybe that means taking a slightly different approach in this game, doing something slightly more unconventional of which they wouldn't have risked previously just to see themselves across the finish line.
Well, certainly so. I think there's no argument on the ruling and how it's been applied and the effect of it. What really is the scratching of the head moment is what does this change and how does this impact the gameplay? That there is something we don't see very often, and it's some things that people talk about of potential rules or potential how can we change the dynamics of the game. It's an interesting debate, or at least a talking point, but doing it during a grand final, the bracket reset, during actual competition gameplay, it doesn't happen that often. That's what's surprising, that's what's stunning. Now it's Dustsucker who, again with a Cells Championship point, to find a way through this new problem.
Absolutely, and humans are pretty good problem solvers, but this is quite the problem they find themselves in, as Zamberg is going to lace it downfield to Venci, who's so patiently waiting to regain control and possession for his side. As Edgeby weaving a ball past one, Zamberg to intercept so nicely as Dansku working down the field opts for a shot, perhaps could have played for a 50-50, but almost found a teammate central.
Rex up and around, he goes low, and that is fabulous. That is fabulous indeed.
Well, certainly so, because Tempo was just flailing in the air trying to get any sort of dunk, any sort of touch onto that looming pass, and Venci in the perfect supportive position, central to find a ball in the back of the net. It was a routine shot for Venci. It's not a routine shot for many players. There's Rexo on the wall. Opts for some control instead of flinging a ball loosely infield. I think for now, certainly going to be a possession game and a game of control for Paradise.
What unfolds is what we'll be looking for much more. That's a decent passing play in Venci, the talking point from this moment onwards from the last game, who has such a influence, a dynamic hold on to it, waiting on the backboard already. He didn't need much time to warm up either. He was ready from the get-go. Was Dustsucker, who has taken a very long time to respond in any shape or kind here. Much more better the second game since, well, how can we say it, post-Venci?
Absolutely so, and Zamberg, he couldn't even connect with a teammate there when the space was given, and Rexo potentially trying to exploit on the counter-attack. There's Dansku off central to Zamberg. The contact was almost there, and Tempo has taken far too many liberties with the time he had on the ball. Completely forgot where he was going. Completely forgot how to hold a controller, and he's off into his own back net.
It's quite literally when you're taking out your Sunday roast out of the oven, it's going hot, 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 and accidentally dropped it. Unfortunate for some, no dinner for Dustsuckers here.
And Zamberg is going to try and change that, but there was no space at all to put a shot on target as Rexo brought him 50-50 down. Back to Zamberg as Venci, man of the hour, strikes to the backboard. Perfect tip off by Dansku and Tempo. Oh, it certainly seems like it's unravelling for this Dustsucker side now. They are so loose at the back. You can see the panic coming through. There's 2 minutes 19 on the clock. They are throwing themselves at everything they can, and it's just not going to be enough.
It's not. It's certainly not, and I'm not saying about what looked like Dustsucker's tournament to win, what looked like the check that could have been having their name written suddenly becomes what? Back into the moment where they have to defend in effectively a Game 7 scenario. That's just how wibbly wobbly in the grand scheme of things everything is.
Absolutely, it's gone from signing the paychecks to just searching for food in the trash, as at the moment they're trying to get their hands on anything they can. It's certainly not paying off, because the structure of this Paradise team at the moment has completely changed, and they know how to play the long game. They know how to keep possession, they know how to create opportunities in a safe manner, and for Dustsucker all they can do is just throw themselves at it and hope for the best.
Certainly the case and everything happens. We've yet to see a real proper goal slip on in, and we are just effectively a passenger, all of us, in this Game 6 right now, as we're effectively waiting the clock to tick on down, because Dustsuckers is not coming back. You cannot, based on what we've seen so far here, they've not really had a goal to celebrate or talk about, and that just is very much element to what we would sit here and break down to just a lack of creativity, a lack of belief that they're capable through, because the fact that Vinci came in and the first question is, are they allowed to do it? Either they were afraid of what he had to offer, or was completely shocked by the surprise.
And I'd lean more towards the direction of fear. And at the moment, it's looking dire for Dustsucker, but they have put a goal away, and of course, like I said in the previous match, they have so many lives left. Well, not anymore, Danny. They had more lives, and they had something more to give in this particular game. I don't feel like much changed for them.
Can't sit there and disagree on that one, as we see a few potential shots go on past as well to that singular goal in the column of red there. DS themselves will be now somewhat happier at the fact they're able to get past this team with that now new conundrum here, but the problem is they will have 5 minutes to work that problem out. But Psycho, here's one for you too. We're going to be effectively playing 14 games in the bracket reset, and let's not forget as well, and I think most people might not remember the bracket of the upper final match, that game went to the 5-2, so they've played the maximum possible games this two sides could face tonight, and it requires maybe 1 goal to separate them too.
Absolutely so, and I can sympathise with Dustsucker at the moment, because they know in this next game they need to keep them clean on the score sheets. They don't want any early concessions, because that will be such an intimate blow to their confidence. They're just going to be an absolute shambles, this Dustsucker side. And for Paradise, well, they've got the momentum in their favour. I'm just hoping they don't get too cocky with it and start crumbling at the very final hurdle.
There we have it. Final hurdle, the final song here on RSC. If you have been enjoying it, we certainly hope you have been. Feel free to drop the follow, join the community, join the Discord, or even if you want to, donate or even subscribe here on Twitch as well. So you might be watching this on YouTube, and we certainly hope you've watched the entirety of it. But, Psycho, 19 games played, barely been separated the entirety of the night. 1-1 series, 1 game to find a winner.
Absolutely so. And both of these two teams revving up their engines as the heartbeats sure to increase when the stakes are on the line the most, as we kick underway in this game number 7. Who would have thought we would have made it the distance after the tipsy-turvy series we've had and the matches prior? Two teams almost inseparable, as you say, going the distance to, what, 19 games across all of tonight, the maximum they could possibly play. It's all coming down to this.
Certainly so, and Sandberg is left in a prior situation. You may have saw our faces for a brief second, but I'll tell you this here, the horror is certainly on the pitch where our eyes will be certainly drawn, and thankfully you missed what occurred there as Sandberg. Well, no shock there as Vency was the one that touched it, moves it away here. Who is ready to block? Who's ready to throw themselves towards the ball? And finally it will be Sandberg to do so.
And Tempo's got a lot of open space to work with, and the back line of Dustsucker, well, they were trying to venture into freedom, and there was so much excitement to push themselves forward that they completely forgot where the back of their defence was as Zambog's up for an infield pass. It's a beautiful pass at that as Tempo sitting in the middle, and a demo that came through Vency, bested by Zambog, and that level of creativity is sure to get the job done.
For the first time in this bracket reset, when they had the opportunity in a championship point, Dustsucker leads in Game 7 by 1 goal. It could have been second, but the old Sandberg cannot slot in the second. He was such a crucial moment. Certainly so in the last time in Game 7. Got the winner, and Tempo fancies a second one. Not to be.
And at the moment, they're going to try and keep this offense running as long as possible, but it's already faded away into black as Rexo is able to get a 50-50 infield to Dansku, ricocheting back to an uncomfortable defensive line as Edgeby is going to see a ball into the centre, but 2 blue players at the back of the pitch not wanting to get involved.
Tempo will be close to this one. There'll be Vency getting involved, and the blue swarm is coming round. Edgeby's up there, tips it. He has himself to work with their Tempo. He slightly stuttered, trying to work out what's going to be occurring. Oh, this is fabulous! Organically picked from the trees, and he's made that one look absolutely perfect. Sub or not, game may be over with that one.
Absolutely. And it was such a beautiful pocket of space that attacker found himself in between the 2 defenders, one waiting way deep at the back line and one extended partially too far forwards, and he found that gap, he exploited it, and we've seen exactly the same thing from that very player earlier on in this series. He was cherry picking downfield with those redirects in that first series as well, and for Dustsucker they have found something that they have not been able to find for the last 2 games, and for Dansku he's going to try and keep the tempo rolling and keep the offense coming as Zambog lunges into a challenge and 2 blue players committing.
Half a game effectively now for this side in blue that was running away. Talked about hell. Will there be clarity at the end for them here as Rexo sits deep here, forced into a challenge, and Sandberg can tip it up. Vency to block, not to really get much here. No infield pass left it there. It's Vency lurking, waiting. Rexo, and it's big Sandberg gets it away. The fact that the international player showing exactly why he is there, picking up in these key battles. Now it's a 1v1 against Vency. Loses it though, but has not lost the war.
And Zambog is just going to hoof it back, alleviate some space for his side as Rexo and Vency are going to be really scheming on how to drive this ball effectively out of their own half as Tempo dives underneath Vency. It's all but over for Dustsucker, have came back from the brink of death, finding once again another opening. Tempo, the player to get it done.
Paradise had Creamy on the pitch. They swapped him out for a mechanical beast that everybody fears for. Vency sees now a 3-0 deficit that he and his 2 fellow teammates need to overcome if they would want a chance to call themselves champions. And it's Vency off the line. That could be a crucial moment, and it's back over, pinched away there. No save awarded by the game. That's cruel, but you can tell probably Sandberg and co was there waiting for it.
And that could have been one of their final opportunities, and so could that have been as well, as Vency wall dashing down the side using that mechanical prowess. Certainly not going to have any effect on a Dustsucker defence as well coordinated as it is right now, as Vency up nice and quickly in the air, and Zambog's going to tip it off to a teammate in Tempo, who strikes once again for that backboard. He's been doing it all day long and he keeps finding those opportunities.
Off to the back wall, this game should be done. It should be dusted. And it will be Dustsuckers to take with that 3-goal lead that they have established here in this bracket reset. They won the last game 7. They will win the next one, and they have done it in some style.
Certainly so, and for Dustsucker, it's going to be all cheers right now as the clock is well and truly ticking down. They really had a lot of work to do, even though they were excelling in that series so far. We have our champions, Danny.